Hello, welcome to another episode on People Up's Playbook. My name is Vara, your host. This podcast is for all HR professionals looking for practical tools, frameworks, and real life examples. In this episode, we will be talking about coaching and feedback. This is something most managers struggle with. And what I realized is it's not because they don't care, because nobody has actually taught them how to coach. So oftentimes what happens is one-on-one turns into a rushed status updates, feedback gets delayed because it feels uncomfortable, high performers create the tension in the team but still they deliver, so it's ignored, and underperformers stay confused instead of improving. Managers leave conversations second guessing themselves, asking themselves, was I too soft, too direct? Did that even land? Why am I having the same issue again? It's frustrating and exhausting. So, in this episode, we are going to fix all that in a very practical way, from how to run one-on-ones that actually build trust and focus and growth, how to give behavior-based feedback without making it personal, how to coach someone through challenge instead of solving it for them. So, talk about this topic. We have Anne-Louise, who is a national manager of leadership development at YMCA Canada, with over 20 years of experience training managers, building strong teams, and helping leaders turn strategy into everyday action. Hi, Anne. I'm so excited to have you on this call.
Hi, Vara. Thank you so much. It's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. So excited to be here with you today.
Awesome. Would love to know your personal journey. What got you into coaching in the first place in leadership development?
Yeah, thanks. I think like lots of people, you graduate university and you try a whole bunch of different jobs. And I had a lot of different jobs. I was a social worker, I ran a liberal constituency office, and I sold marketing products all across North America. And the link within all the jobs was I loved working with people and helping them to get to their goals. It just was inspiring to me and it was motivating to me. So I played around a little bit and I went back to school and I got my adult education so I could begin to teach. And it wasn't until I also got some coaching courses under my belt that I realized putting the two together, kind of working with adults, teaching and coaching, really was the passion for me to help people come to, their best, be their best selves and find their best point in their career. So that's what brought the passion to me. And I still do it every day today and love it.
That's amazing. Coaching is such a great topic, especially not just in the workplace, but also in our personal life, to coach our children, to coach our husbands, or anybody in general. So I want to ask, to begin, before we begin coaching, there's so many words like coaching, mentorship,
Yeah.
teaching somebody skills. I want to ask,
Mhm.
what exactly is coaching and what it isn't, and why is it like such a powerful way to empower teams?
Yeah, and thanks for that. First of all, I just want to disclaim I don't convince that I can coach other people's husbands or they can use this in their home life. But let's see what we've got here. For me, coaching is really it's about being curious, right? So it's leaning into being curious and listening to people and creating an open dialogue. That's a general definition of coaching, but it's a bit of a structured process. It's a collaborative process. It is one where you're facilitating co-solutions and helping people to feel empowered in their own decision making. So that's the element of what coaching is. Sometimes we say that it involves a couple key steps. One is active listening, and there's three levels of listening that people have, and usually we focus on the first level. So as I'm talking to you, Vara, you might be thinking about what to say next.
Mhm.
That's kind of like the first level of listening. But coaching dives in a little bit into kind of like a second and third, where you begin to paraphrase back what someone's saying to demonstrate that you're listening to them. So that's a key element of coaching. After listening, it's asking curious questions. So really trying to understand the why under things. Vara, I'm curious about what motivated you to want to do this podcast today. Tell me a little bit about that. I'd love to learn a little bit more. And the other thing with coaching that's really important is to give a space for someone to reflect. So they can kind of begin to trust their own instincts. So if we were coaching at this, I'd say, so Vara, after having this session today, tell me a little bit about like what really resonated for you. Are there any strategies in here that you think will work really well for you and that you want to adopt into your practice? So you're connecting with somebody, you're being really curious with them, and then you're giving them some space to reflect. Now, sometimes mentoring and teaching are other words that come up, and those can be slightly different. Mentoring is typically where, in our situation, you might say to me, Anne-Louise, I have a problem, or I'm struggling with something, and I really need a mentor. So I'd say, great, like let's talk it through, but I'd be sharing my advice all the time. I'd say, well, in the past I've tried this, or you might want to consider this, or here's 5 steps that you might want to do. So I'm imparting wisdom as a mentor. In coaching, you don't impart your wisdom. You're really trying to draw the wisdom out of the person. And then teaching is different. That's really where there's a set of skills. So let me teach you how to go from A to B to C, or let me teach you how to give feedback. I'll teach you how to do that. So, often as a manager, sometimes we do need to mentor. Sometimes we do need to teach. Sometimes we do need to tell people what to do, like to manage them. But there's a lot of times when we can dive into coaching your staff, which will get a greater result out of them rather than using some of the other techniques.
Right. The way I see coaching is like helping somebody else become the best version of themselves.
Yes.
And mentoring is just like to help them achieve goals or achieve a task or something that is in hand that they need help um, with their other person's experience and knowledge, but not in helping them find their own way of doing things
hmm Yeah,
in some
exactly.
sense.
So
Mhm.
mentorship, I mean, obviously, people can mentor and coach at the same time. But traditionally, mentorship is, I've done something for years and years and years, and you're just starting to do it. So let me share some of my wisdom with you
Mhm.
rather than having you bring all your fresh new ideas to the table.
Mhm. So, in your opinion, like which situations how do a manager, for example, myself, would know when I should wear a hat of coach versus mentor versus a trainer?
That's a great question. Sometimes it does depend on the person. I will have to say that. But if you've got a situation where someone's solving a complex problem and there isn't a fire, an emergency, like a risk situation, a health situation, something that does require a very specific action, it is a good idea to go in to coach that person a little bit to see whether or not they can come to their own conclusions. Because solving complex problems or learning how to solve and think through complex problems can really build your critical thinking skills. And so the more space that we give to our staff to be able to do that is great. If it's something, though, that goes against health and safety, any kind of policy that has a big risk, you'd want to step in and do either a mentoring or for sure tell somebody what it is that needs to be done.
Makes sense. But in your experience in this 20 years, what are some of the mistakes you've seen managers making while coaching their team members?
So the mistakes I've seen, I'm wondering if I can answer that in terms of where I've seen that they could have coached, but they might not have.
Hmm.
If we do it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
And we do this scenario at our office all the time just to kind of run through it. But let's say you've got a staff person who's late for work.
Hmm.
And so a manager might come in and say, you know what, your shift starts at this time, and I need you here at this time. So I need you to be here tomorrow because that's when your shift starts. If you're looking to coach the person, you might say, I noticed that you're not able to get here on time. So I'd like to understand what's stopping you from getting here on time. And, is there something else that we can do to help you get here on time? And so you're diving in to understand a little bit about why isn't this person getting here? And so that you're co-doing a solution. So the person might say, you know what, my son's childcare moved and they're now, an hour away and I have to take 2 buses to get there and I'm trying to make it, but the bus isn't always on time. and say, okay, well, let's think this through. If we start your shift 20 minutes later, will that allow you to get on time? Because the important thing for me as a manager is I need to know you're at the desk at the time that I've asked you to be at the desk. So let's dive into, say, if we started your shift 20 minutes later, is that something that you think you could do? Or do you want me to change your shift for just 2 weeks until you come up with another solution? So a coaching in that really basic situation is the difference between let's kind of work through together. I see there's a behavior, I see there's something going on, but I don't want to penalize right away. I want to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Managing would just deal with just the fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see this coming up like in multiple different scenarios. More of a coaching is the way I see it is more of care plus problem solving together.
Yeah. And getting to know the person, right? So making the space so that I'm connecting with you actually as an individual, and
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what's motivating you, what challenges are you having, and that really helps to build that foundational trust
Mm-hmm.
that's important for a team.
Yeah, it sounds like a way more effective way of managing team, using these coaching principles or methodology in everything that they do on
Mhm.
day-to-day basis.
There are times where it might not work.
Mm-hmm.
So a coach approach, if you've got a staff person
Mm-hmm.
who's consistently being late, for example, that's when you have to go to making it more of a difficult conversation where there's a consequence. So it's a bit of a first step to begin to understand, lean in, be curious, try and do a co-solution, giving the benefit of the doubt. And then if that's not going to work, and if the person's consistently late for the next 2 weeks, then you actually have a different situation on your hands.
Right. So I think that's kind of one of my questions too today, to understand how to balance the empathy that we have for others with accountability.
Mm,
Oftentimes, being a manager, accountability is easy because it's just like, this is what you get need to done. I'm going to follow up with you and check in with you if you can do it or not. Um, with coaching, there's a lot of empathy. Now, how do we manage, how do we balance between that care and also the accountability that we get being a manager?
yeah, accountability is a hot topic these days. I'm not sure in other sectors, but in our sector, it definitely is. In the coaching framework, there's a gentleman who I work with at the Y who made it very simple for everybody. So, when you're going to coach a staff person, I'm going to connect with you first. So let's say, Vara, you in the example where the person was late all the time, I'm leaning and I'm connecting with you. I hear you're late all the time. Then I'm going to clarify and just say, are you seeing this? What seems to be happening? I'm going to ask some curious questions, and we do a co-solution. So let's take that for somebody who we have to do accountability. And so it's really leaning to that same framework. I would be, let's say you're a fundraiser, Vara, and you're not hitting your targets.
Mhm.
So I'm like, Vara, you're not hitting your targets, you're not hitting your targets. You're like, I know, I need to. So the coaching conversation would be, Vara, I understand that we haven't hit our targets again this week, and I'm just kind of curious about what might be getting in your way. So, you might come with a couple of reasons and say, okay, Vara, what do you think is the impact of us not hitting the target? So I want you to tell me what actually is going to happen to us as an association or within our team if we don't hit the target. So I want you to think through instead of me saying, here it is. So the impact if we don't hit our targets is we're not going to be able to give camp spots for 20 people. So that's a big impact. So we don't want to have that. So Vara, what do you think it is that you should be doing or you could do to hit that target? Because we know the impact and we don't want to have that impact. So let's talk a little bit about what you could be doing. So now I'm not saying I'm letting you know this is actually your problem to solve. So we'd come up with little strategies and say, okay, so I think we've determined that we need to hit that target because the impact is something that we don't want to have. And you've listed out some great strategies. So we do have a timeline here. So could you let me know what's your next step going to be from here? And when should I be checking in to see if you're on track and if you need any additional help? So that's a way that you would coach. You've got empathy. I'm going to listen. I'm going to understand. But I also want to make sure that I'm not taking the accountability from you,
Mhm.
right? I'm leaving the accountability with you to say, what are you going to do? What do you think the impact's going to be? And that's what makes the helps to build that or balance that tension between accountability and empathy.
Mhm. This works, I feel like this works great with people who want to take ownership, want to make sure things get right.
Mhm.
And we also often find coming across people who loves hand holding. So manager feel like this is too much. I'm spending significant amount of time sitting with the person, constantly going through the same things. Um, then how do we deal with that when it's repeatedly going into coaching sessions? When do we know enough is enough?
Yeah, no, that's when it becomes a performance management situation. And I think each staff person needs to make that decision. Let's say, for example, you and I've coached you on the same thing 3 to 4 times. I'm like, Vara, so we're still not hitting this target, and I really want to understand what's getting in the way. I'd like to know if there's excuses, if there's things going on. To me, that shifts from coaching to an actual performance management situation, because there's two things that as a leader I would feel in that situation. Number one is they're not learning, they're not growing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the number two is I don't know if they have the capacity to learn and grow the way that we need them to grow. Because ultimately, as leaders, we want to bring our teams along, and then we want to move them up. Right? We want to know they want to grow, they want to move up, they want to take more responsibility. I did have a time in my career where I had someone come into the office consistently. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And instead of coaching, I said, you know what? Why don't you come back when you've got 2 or 3 suggestions for me, and then we'll choose which is the best one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't actually engage in the conversation. I just need to let them know that my door's there once you've thought through some of the suggestions. But 2 or 3 times coaching somebody on the same topic is really, in my mind, you've given them a fair, adequate space to kind of come to a conclusion.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Now I want to shift a little bit into how do we do this one-on-one sessions properly? Like oftentimes manager, because they don't have been trained on how to coach members, others, it often becomes a status updates or some project information to share or something like that. So if a manager wants their one-on-ones to actually support the growth and engagement,
Mhm.
what should those conversations really focus on, and what kind of questions should they be asking consistently?
Yeah. Shifting that one-on-one meeting to more of a dialogue rather than, like the status update, like done, 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 is such a great opportunity to get to know your team, and to know people individually. So the first thing I do, and it's part of that coaching framework, is really talk about the person first. So I want to connect with you first. So if we're going to do a one-on-one and we're coming into a meeting, whether it's virtual, whether it's on the phone, or whether it's in person, I want to understand kind of where you're at. And people think this sounds a little funny, but I want to do a check in. And sometimes they'll say, Vara, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your week going this far? One being it's not going great at all, and 10's it's fabulous. And so I want to know what your energy level's like. When I'm teaching a class, sometimes I say, if you were the weather, what would you be? Some people are tornadoes, some are cloudy storms, some are sunny, bright days, some are torrential rainstorms. But it gives you a sense of what the energy is like and what the person's bringing. So on a one-on-one meeting, if you spend a little bit of time just to saying, how's your week going so far? On a 1 to 10, how are you? To connect with you, then it lets me know what your energy is and what your week is going, and then I can adjust accordingly. Because imagine if you're having the worst week ever and I'm just focused on ticking the box. Oh, this has been great. This project's great. This, like, you're not going to feel seen. You're not going to feel heard. You don't feel connected. So connecting with the person first is really important. It could take as little as 5 minutes. The second thing is to ask people not only what they're doing, but how they're doing it. So if you're doing a status update, it's tick, did you get this done? Did you get this done? But be curious about, what's gone well for you this week, Vara. Tell me a little bit about that. Well, Anne-Louise, I solved a customer's problem and I was really happy about it. I'd say, well, that's great. So what did you do? Like, tell me your steps. Like, what were some of your process? So you could share, well, I did a little bit of research. I understood that they had a background in IT, and so they were frustrated by RT, and they were quite knowledgeable, and no one was acknowledging how smart they were. So I wanted to co-solution with them. And I said, that's great. I love the way that you did that. Like, what made you think of doing that research? And then I would give positive feedback and say, I really like the way you handled that. Like, that shows a lot of persistence. It shows a lot of great thinking, good on your feet. Like, those are really great skills. So, thanks for sharing that. So I'd be curious not about what you're doing, but how you're doing it. Gives me an opportunity to give you feedback and understand a little bit about what you're thinking. The next thing I do is to ask probing questions, same thing on the challenges. So it's not what's your problem. It's like, okay, so what are some of the challenges you're facing? What strategies have you used so far? What has worked? What hasn't worked? Like let's just talk it through and see. Again, I would give opportunities for feedback on that. It could be, I like the way you're thinking on this. I love that you tried this strategy. I can see why it didn't work, or I'm sorry that didn't work, but you tried it, and that's really important. So what is it that you want to do next? And how can I help you with that? So you're focusing on them, you're being curious, you're giving them feedback. And then I like to close a kind of, circle back with the person. So let's say you and I are in our one-on-one, and your week is a 3 out of 10. I'm like, darn, she's not having a good week. We shared a bit of success. So I'm like, okay, I hope she feels good. You've articulated some challenges, and I'm like, okay, you've got great suggestions for your challenges. I'm asking you how can I help you? I want to close by circling back to you. Say, Vara, okay, so is there anything else that you want to focus on in this one-on-one? Or I might say, is there one or two skills that you want to learn over the next couple of weeks? Or is there something else in your career that you want to pay some attention to that you'd like me to know that I can help you with? So I'm kind of closing it back with you as well. And that gives us a chance to further build a relationship together. So those would be the 4 pieces
That
or
sounds
4 points.
amazing. Yeah, I want to ask like this actually feels very human, very personable.
Mhm.
Feels like I'm cared for, that my work matters, that I matter, which actually builds, I know this is one of the biggest reason why people leave the organizations. Statistically, it's not feeling enough appreciated.
Mhm.
I see how coaching is not just helping them improve their performance, but also helping making sure that their work get noticed, making sure that they feel like they're mattered, that there's a connection there, that they're creating a place to feel belonged. There's a lot of things that are happening in the coaching, um,
Mhm.
not just the improving them too, which is very interesting. My follow-up question there is with the coaching, sometimes people come up with things that they want to develop naturally, and sometimes they don't. But they are things that they need to develop to make sure the work is going well and that we're hitting the targets, we're doing the project well. So when they are not coming up with the skill that is required, how do we probe the conversation and move that into coaching? Because my understanding of coaching is a team member come up with their own topic, say like, I need to learn this. Can you please help me? And then coach would say, sure. So how does it work around other way around where organization need the person to grow?
I think sometimes there's those questions dive into performance management,
Hmm.
right? So coaching is a way that we work with our staff and our teams to make them feel empowered, to trust their instincts, to help them come up with their own solutions. And if someone is not doing that after quite a bit of coaching, it could go into performance management. However, I do sometimes wonder whether or not, as managers, we're letting our staff know quite clearly what capabilities or behaviors or attributes we're actually looking for them to exhibit. And so, one of the things that I would do with staff is I would let them know what is important, like what are important skills for them to have on the team so that they're aware of that. For me, the number one is with the skill is that our staff has got a growth mindset. So I let staff know, like, we need a team, we need a growth mindset, let's expand our thinking, let's look at different perspectives, little different options. So making them aware of what the skills are that we're looking for then allows you to go back and say, okay, we've talked about what they are and I'm not seeing these. And
Mm,
so then that can go into performance management. HR professionals on this line right now say, no, you can't do it that way. But I do feel it is important for staff to know, what do you think is important for attributes to be on the team?
mm,
So for mine, one of it is growth mindset. So people are really thinking broad and are open to feedback, open to change, open to new ideas. The second is that staff are resilient. And so, you could have the same customer issue come up 20 times, and you keep solving it. And instead of getting frustrated, you just continue to work through the problem. So you're demonstrating resilience. The third one is adaptability. I was talking to a colleague on Friday, and we said that there's no more change management because everything is change. So we don't need to manage change anymore. We just need to be adaptable to the ongoing change. So are teams members adaptable? Do they understand what adaptability looks like? Do they know what to do to become adaptable? And the last one is accountability. So are they owning up to mistakes? Are they understanding what's in their portfolio?
mm,
So let's say you have a staff person who's not exhibiting the right behaviors. They're not coming to you to say, I want to do better. One thing is you could put them over to performance and say, these are in your job. Here's the things that we need you to do. I've been trying to coach you and it's not there. The other thing is make sure your team is aware of upfront of some of the attributes that you're really looking for, and giving them feedback throughout their day or throughout their time with you about the times that you are seeing them do it, and times where you say, what, I need you to lean into to have a more resilience here,
mm,
or I need you to lean into more accountability. This is actually part of your area, not mine. And so I just want to make sure you're aware and understanding what the accountability of your role is.
mm.
So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Yeah,
that's how I take a look at it.
what I'm understanding is, as a manager, when I have a team, there are different types of coaching. I don't know if this is a term, like reactive coaching and proactive coaching. Reactive is like something I need them to develop, and that's important, crucial for a team success. So I try coaching, and if it's not working, I move that into a performance improvement plan and making sure that they're improving there. If and the other part of it is like proactively asking them to, like, what are things you want to develop? Let me help you. And even
Mhm.
that translating into succession planning of me finding, looking at people that have a lot of potential of becoming a leader. How can I train them on it so they can become the next leader?
So those attributes that I just gave you are, I guess, would be part of what I consider to be something to think of for the succession planning. So that the staff know this is what it is that you'd be looking for. I think the only thing is I don't think there is reactive and proactive coaching.
Mm,
I think there's because coaching itself is a way of it's a way of working with somebody. Coaching is, like connecting, diving in, being curious, listening, paraphrasing. So it's a way of interacting with an individual. I think as a manager, you have to ask yourself, what am I coaching for? Right? Am I coaching for someone who's got some behavior I want to change? Am I coaching because I want to build someone up so that they can really begin to trust their gut and grow? Or am I coaching somebody because they're not doing the job
mm,
and I need them to understand that they need to do the job? So you'd be following the same kind of steps, but what you're saying in the sessions is going to be quite different. So if you're going to coach someone who's not doing a good job, that's where you're leaning in to understand, Vara, we've talked about this many times, and we really need to hit that fundraising target. So I think we've mentioned the impact is quite strong. So just talk to me a little bit about what are you thinking in terms of those barriers for hitting the target, like what's stopping you? Because if we don't have the target hit in the next couple of weeks, then that is actually going to be something that we're going to have to talk about in terms of your performance. So you're still leaning in, but you're saying it towards performance. If I was coaching you before because you were new and you hadn't hit the target because you were new, then I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt and I'm coaching with a different set of questions.
That makes sense. So, can you share the framework once more? And how, if I'm a manager, how do I think through which one should I use when and what questions? How do I think about questions majorly?
Yeah. A lot of us have a list of questions at our desk. So it's not something that you need to ingrain into yourself. But a gentleman that I worked with at the YMCA, he came up with the most simple way of looking at coaching for an organizations. So step number one is connect with a person. So you just want to connect. You might want to say, Vara, I'm seeing that you are not hitting the fundraising target, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. See how you're doing with that. So I'm just connecting with you, and I'm connecting to the situation. Second one is you want to clarify. So talk to me a little bit about what you think is getting in your way. You'd give me some answer, and I'd say, okay, so what I'm hearing is you're working towards the target, but you're not getting the reports on time, and because you're not getting the reports, it's stopping you from doing this. Do I understand this properly? So I'm clarifying. I'm just understanding. I've connected with you. I've asked you to share something with me, and now I'm clarifying that I understand properly. It also signals to you that I'm listening because I'm clarifying back. The third thing is then I'm going to go in with some curious questions. And these are ones you could have right on your desk. We could give out to your viewers a set of questions. But you want to go in, okay, so help me understand, what have you tried so far to get the reporting done? And what do you think is the biggest obstacle? What happens when you've tried some of those solutions? And what do you think would happen if we do something else? Your curious questions are open-ended. They're ones where I'm asking you your opinion. One of the most common one is just tell me a little bit more about what this challenge is, just to get the person thinking. So that's the curiosity part. And the final one is closing. So Vara, so as I understand it, let's just kind of recap a little bit. We're not hitting the fundraising target. The reports are seem to be the big roadblock. You've reached out to IT a couple times. So based on this conversation, what is your next step going to be? What is it that you'd like to do? And then you're gonna close the conversation with an action. So connect, clarify, be curious with questions, and close with some action. That's a really simple framework for coaching.
That's amazing. What about behavior feedback? Now, I want to shift to behavior side. Oftentimes, like managers also face this challenge where they avoid giving feedback on behavior issues because they worry the person may take it personally,
Mhm.
especially around attitude, communication style, or collaboration. There's always the belief that you can't change someone's personality. So I'm curious, how should managers approach these conversations without damaging trust, and what feedback framework do you personally recommend for this?
Yeah, like show the hands of people who love to give feedback because I think it's probably pretty far and few in between. So I like the question. A lot of what we talked about already today is building that foundational trust within your team, right? Getting to know people and connecting. And that's actually one of the first steps I say to people is the more that you really get to know people in your team and build that trust, it does give giving feedback a lot easier. I don't think you can change a personality, but I do believe we can make people aware of their behavior and change their behavior. And so leaning into giving feedback often in the one-on-one, both positive and negative, is a great thing to do. If you see feedback, if you see somebody do something really well, give the feedback. If you see a quick behavior that you don't like, you just might want to mention it. So these are small micro things just to keep dialogue going. But
Mhm.
let's say we've got a scenario where we definitely need to give feedback. So let's take John. Bless you. Let's take John. So John's in a meeting, and I think we all know a John. And I apologize to the Johns out there. So a John or James, but they're really passionate in meetings, and they have a lot of information to share, a lot of ideas to share. They keep interrupting. So, people are thinking, I can't say anything because every time I say something, John's going to take up the space. So now we want to give some feedback. And this is where we separate the person from the behavior. And that's one of the best things to do in terms of giving feedback is separate those two. So by doing that, you're not saying that John's a difficult person. You're just saying there's some behaviors here I think you might not be aware of. So let's say we want to do that. So you're John now. So, John, I noticed I'm going to use that framework. I'm going to connect with you. So, John, I noticed in the last meeting you had a lot of things to share about this topic. It seems to be really important to you. Tell me a little bit about why you love this topic. So, I'm just, connecting with him. The second thing I'm going to do is kind of like clarify a little bit of the behavior. I noticed that you had a lot of things to share, and you might not be aware of it, but some people didn't feel comfortable that they had the space to share. So there wasn't that much time. So I didn't know if you noticed that the impact of sharing the ideas. So some people didn't feel that they had some space to share. You might say, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I was caught up with what I wanted to say." Yeah, and I'd like to give everybody, even the quiet people, the non-quiet people, some space. So I'm wondering if we together, would you think that you'd be able to give a little bit more pause next time in the meeting, or how else can we make sure that your ideas come across, but we give space for other people? Do you have any suggestions? So we're kind of co-solutioning it together. So the objective here is that John walks away not thinking that he's difficult or that he has a personality problem, but just he has a behavior that maybe he didn't realize was impacting other people. So you're just sharing the impact and saying, hey, maybe there's something we can do differently.
Mhm.
So wondering if that would help for you.
Mhm. Wow, that is such a great way to handle that situation. It did not feel um, like the person feeling def attacked and that they have to
Hmm.
defend, which is very common in feedback that happens, but it sounded very smooth, um, direct, and empathetic.
Hmm. Feedback always makes people nervous because it's usually negative. And for in a lot of organizations, you might never get feedback, don't have an open dialogue, and then all of a sudden says, "Vara, I'd like to talk to you." And you're just like, "Oh, no, oh no, what do they want to do?" And typically, feedback was given kind of in that sandwich, right? So let me say something nice to you,
Hmm.
which you're not even focusing on because then they're going to say something negative,
Hmm.
and then something nice, and there isn't dialogue around it. There isn't opportunity to kind of to talk it through or give an answer.
Hmm.
And so the objective here is just to create conversation and dialogue as often as possible. That also stops it from becoming a difficult conversation. Because when we avoid giving feedback, let's take John, for example, if he interrupts in the next 6 meetings, it becomes an issue. And then you're going from just giving a little bit of feedback to actually having a difficult conversation.
Right. Yes, I can see how clearly it's different. A lot of people just do one way giving feedback, but coaching is a lot more effective. It's two-way
Hmm.
and making sure the other person also understands and on the same page, which makes it
Hmm.
way more effective. I want to ask, like, for every manager, every HR leader listening to this podcast, what is this one habit do you think they should start building from today? One mistake they should avoid, and one tool or framework they should start using?
One habit I think would be to lean into curious questions as much as you possibly can. And it doesn't happen overnight. If Vara, you and I have one-on-one updates that are always check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark, and all of a sudden I turn them into 30-minute conversations, that might seem weird. So let's just we start to weave in curious questions to ask your staff, how are they getting things done? What challenges? What have they tried so far? How can you help? And based on this conversation, what would you like to do next time differently, or what are you learning from this conversation? So just start to weave in those curious questions. That can really begin to get the mental script going for both yourself and for your staff, that this is more than just a status update, or it's more than just status quo within our job. So that would be number one. Number two on the framework, I like the really simple one. Connect with the person, clarify what you guys are talking about. Make sure you're understanding. Be curious with questions and close conversations. Vara, this is great. What is it from this conversation that you want to move forward on? A lot of times we forget that too.
Mm.
People are so anxious to leave conversations. So doing the close. And remind me of the third.
Third one is just what tool framework they should start using it immediately.
So the tool or framework would be the fourth, the connect, clarify, curious, and close.
Hmm.
Going online, there's a lot of coaching questions that you can get. Pull them up by your desk, play with a few that make sense for you, and give yourself a little bit more time with your staff, because it would take a 20-minute one-on-one checklist could turn into a 30-minute, because you're allowing more space for dialogue.
Hmm. Makes sense. Like great tips. I would also attach the coaching questions down below for anyone watching. And following up, last question I have is any
Yes.
resources you recommend people listening here to improve their coaching skills, whether that's a book, podcast, certification, podcasts like Pop's Playbook. Uh,
Well, I love your playbook. I think this is one of the number one things. And for all the people listening, I'm constantly on LinkedIn, and I'm forwarding all the snippets of information along, because it's great bits of information. I love Simon Sinek. He's got some great, 1 2 minute snapshots of really important topics, really important moments on YouTube. So he's a great resource. For those who like to lean into a softer, empathetic, Brene Brown, Dare to Lead is a great tool as well to read through and pull out some exercises for a team meeting if you want to kind of start to build that empathy muscle a little bit. And then for coaching courses, there are a lot of LinkedIn has got some great courses that you could take half an hour to an hour just to kind of practice that muscle a little bit. So I'd recommend them as well.
Awesome. Just to recap, I think this episode has packed a lot of important information for new managers or someone who have never taken this coaching hat before to start thinking about it from now on. I'll be sharing all those resources down below so you can, I think, leadership management, everything is just journey. I always believe that, and it's a great place to start and start experimenting. Always failing and experiment again. So with that, I would thank you, Anne-Louise, for coming onto the show and sharing great knowledge. I personally learned a lot about coaching from this episode, and I hope others too. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love that you just said it's a journey, and we all make mistakes. I mean, we're human, so we try. But I find it's a good coaching is a good tool to really build some great relationships.
And great teams,
Yeah, great
awesome
tips.
organizations. Yeah.
Yeah.